Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowdon Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette. And our special guest today, legendary traffic consultant Rick Leckner. Rick, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Did you like legendary? That was good?
Legendary, that means I'm really old, and I really appreciate the fact that the street in front of us is lined with old stone.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful welcome.
This was not the case a week ago. So this
but
is
we did it for
just
you.
now.
Well, how did they possibly miss not putting cones in Décarie?
Yeah, it was only a matter of time. All right, we're here to talk about traffic, which you've talked about before, but specifically want to talk about the op-ed you wrote to the Gazette the other day.
Yes.
And I think the headline, or at least their headline, says it all. Traffic is a mess. Solutions exist. It's time to act. So let's start with why you felt compelled to write this. You've been doing this for a long time. Why now?
I've been doing it for a long time, and I felt with the municipal election so close that we finally have an opportunity to hopefully hear from the politicians and say something meaningful that may once and for all solve our traffic mess, because up until now, it's been chaos and still is.
So when you talk about a mess, there are obviously some parts of the city that get looked at regularly. You talk about not far from where you are right now, Jean Talon Décarie, which is a giant mess when you try to get off the Décarie Expressway. But then we get to, let's start with the Cavendish situation, which I know you've been involved in personally as well. I had Luc Rabouin on my show the other day. I asked about Cavendish because people want to know. This is still Projet Montréal. His answer was, and I'm sure you've heard this one before too, well, you know, there are train lines that are there, and they're owned by the companies, be it CN or CP, and it would be prohibitively expensive to either come up with a design for an overpass or an underpass, at which point I said, wait a sec, we have lots of overpasses and underpasses. In fact, there's one on Décarie at Jean Talon. Why do you think, anyway, the city is doing nothing on this?
I shake my head, Aaron and Bill, because these guys, Projet Montréal, has been able to come up with more excuses than literally you can fill a book with. I mean, they made a commitment back in 2017. The Quebec government ceded the Hippodrome to them for $1 on the condition that Cavendish would be built, on the condition they would put $10 to $15 million into a fund every year to fund the Cavendish extension. That evaporated. They then allocated the money elsewhere. 2022, there was another promise. Right now, which Rabouin is not admitting to, I have a plan which shows every other extension but Cavendish. Okay? Really? It's completely off the table. They are talking about crossing 8 tracks. So when he says they can't cross tracks, I mean, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I apologize, sir, but you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, because on the one hand, he's telling you they can't do it, it's too expensive. On the other hand, they're considering crossing 8 tracks, which will never happen. CP will never allow that.
But this has been going on how many years? 40 years?
60.
60 years.
60, I hate to admit it.
And I mean, this is the big excuse, the tracks?
Well, it's one of the excuses. It's one legitimate excuse because it's not in the hands of any level of government other than CP, really, which is not government.
Right.
So, and there was an agreement back when Denis Coderre was around. Pierre Desrochers, who was the president of the Comité Exécutif de Montréal, had an agreement with CP to cross 2 sets of tracks. And that thing just, Coderre got defeated, Plante came in, the agenda changed, and we're nowhere. We're absolutely nowhere.
Well, you pointed out that way back when, 2011 or something like that, when Denis Coderre was around, like he suggested having a traffic czar, and whatever happened to that? Because we could certainly use somebody who would oversee and point out, like, just...
Hey, I'm not looking for a job, but there should be someone finally, like an inspector general, someone who says, you know what, I've listened to everybody, but this is it. This is what's going to happen. I'm tired of the crap. Here's what we have to do.
To Bill's point, though.
But he did.
Yeah, exactly.
2 months.
Pierre Lacoste, who I knew, nice guy. He was a traffic reporter. I worked with him. He got named by Coderre. And I must admit, I was disappointed at the time because he didn't even ask me if I wanted to, and I had helped Denis substantially in the 2013 campaign. In any event, Pierre was named, lasted 2 months,
Right.
and it ended.
Yeah. And basically, we've been in chaos ever since.
we were in chaos
Long
through that
before
period as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Right, but it didn't help.
So let me
Nothing's changed.
go back a while. First of all, the idea, I didn't know you were disappointed you weren't named. I just assumed Denis Coderre knew Pierre and kind of said, hey, this will look
not that
good. Symbolic more than anything else.
I think out of courtesy, he should have at least asked me
Yeah.
the question. But that's an
Okay.
ego thing, so we can let that go.
Let's
quickly.
talk about your op-ed, which also goes into a couple of other bad decisions in terms of how roads were constructed. We talk about the 20, which for all the money spent there, still that section where you have to drive when you're heading west or even east at some point, still creates a bottleneck. And it's hard to believe that for everything they spent and everything they designed, that wasn't factored into it.
It is worse than it was before,
Yeah.
because you've got at least 4 lanes merging into 2, and the traffic reporters can pre-record Highway 20, westbound through the yards, starts to back up at Angoulême and stays heavy to Norman. That's almost 10 hours a
Yeah.
day they can say
Yeah.
that, because it's in even early afternoon. It's just without fail. I mean, it's like trying to fit 20 pounds into a 5-pound paper bag. It doesn't work.
Then you have the situation trying to get off to the airport. Off Côte de Liesse, it is a complete disaster. We've seen so many images of people just giving up, people in cabs, for example, and walking
Yeah.
the rest of the way. And even off Highway 20, when they redesigned that exit for the airport, that again is putting all these cars into one very, very small space, and that's become almost impossible as well.
But this again, guys, is another example where not long ago, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars was spent. I mean, who's drawing up these things?
Yeah.
You know, it's very easy for me to sit here and criticize, but the proof is in the pudding. I mean, there's what you mentioned, 20 through the yards, the exit or entrance to Dorval Airport, the top end of Décarie Expressway. How they've configured that is still not great, because you still have people crisscrossing over needlessly. So that causes not only a bottleneck, but the accidents at Royal Mount are numerous. And there's a Lackady Circle. And then, of course, the poster child of all of this, which set the tone way back when, was Jean Talon Paris Décarie.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nightmare.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the home of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowdon Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowdon Delicatessen.
And it's going to be a fun weekend, Rick, because Illitour Bridge is being closed for the entire weekend. There's a bike race in the middle of the city. I mean, it's almost as if like they want to see how much stress Montrealers, motorists, and cyclists too, by the
But
way.
that's a good point, Bill, because you don't have to go far to see that. People are driving very, very poorly. They're going through stop signs, forget it. I mean, you might as well remove them in parts of the city. But going through traffic lights, cutting people off. I mean, people they've lost it.
Yeah.
And it's all because of the frustration. You basically can't go anywhere without seeing one of these bloody things, and it affects everybody's drive. The good news with the Illitour is, however, that this weekend closure, which will be a royal pain, here there will be gain after, because they're opening a 5th lane.
right.
But it'll never, in the life of the current span, go back to 6 lanes. So
Right.
the new Illitour is supposed to be finished by 2027. I'm not so sure it will be. But the new bridge will have 6 lanes. The current bridge will stay at 5. And the new bridge, again, lack of it. They're not even creating a bus lane. They're going to be using the shoulder of the Pont de l'Auto as the bus lane. So what happens if somebody stalls, or there's something that has to block
Yeah.
the shoulder? I mean, it's just, I don't get it. And obviously neither does Transport Quebec.
So
You know-
look, I want to go, to be fair though, and we talk plenty, I certainly do, about this administration, the fact that I think as ideologues that they just don't like the idea of cars. I get that. That's their mantra. But if we go back in previous administrations, what people talk about here or ask about is, why do we go through this year after year after year? Roads that were redone 2 years, 3 years later need to be redone again. You've been doing this a long time. When did this start, and has this always been the case in Montreal?
You're right. You need to be fair, because you can't pin this completely on the Plante administration. They've exacerbated it with their agenda of no cars. But this goes way back to when they originally built the roads. I mean, where else do you see ruts in the road, basically where trucks drive, or where else do you see potholes on the Laurentian 100? It doesn't happen anywhere else. So the roads were not built properly in the first place. There was a lot of, shall we say, skimming off the top and probably the bottom too. And then we had the Charbonneau Commission. So we're in this catch-up mode, and then not sufficient funds were allocated to fix the roads. So it's been a bad situation, which now with the Plante administration is worse because they've reduced the roadway width with all these planters and sidewalks and bike lanes. The Plante administration doesn't want to see cars. How do you build a REM station parking without parking?
Nowhere to park the car.
You know, I love the fact they blame the weather. But yet you drive into Ontario, you drive into Vermont, and the roads are fairly pristine compared to what we have here.
As they say, they're very creative.
Yeah, very
creative.
But what is it about this? So the new government comes in with new friends in the business, and like they decide to redo.
I want to go to his point, though. You're right. You cross the border, Le Col, and you drive on I-87. Literally, it's like driving on glass compared to what it is on the Quebec side. So the argument about, well, their weather is not the same as ours, that's not fair. Why is that, do you think?
Because they were not built properly in the first place. There wasn't enough crushed stone or whatever. I'm not an engineer, but it's clear, and I've heard this repeatedly, they didn't do it properly to begin with. So because of the heavy traffic and the heavy truck traffic, it just couldn't sustain the weight. Plus, we don't have a beltway around Montreal. That's another issue to the north of Montreal. So it's, I'm afraid, going to be more of the same unless there's some dramatic change. Look, funding is very tight everywhere, and a lot of money is still needed. They're talking about rebuilding the Metropolitan. They're talking about rebuilding the Metropolitan exactly as it is now.
Well,
3 lanes in each direction.
I can only
pave it. How are they going to build it?
If it's taking 8 years to fix part of Penfield where the water station is, what is the cost? What's the time for the Metro? 40 years?
It could be because they've had to do the section between Côte-de-l'Est and the Laurentian Route 3 times.
Yeah.
They keep saying, well, this is at the contractor's expense. That's great, but it's at our expense too because it's hellishly inconvenient.
You do point out, though, I mean, in fairness, there are some kinds of solutions. Having a traffic czar would help. And as you point out, having people not drive with just one person in the car would be a tremendous help as well. Transportation would help.
I'm glad you point that out because, as they say, we all have a role to play. And I'm as guilty as the next guy because, it's convenient. You get in your car, you go where you want to go, but often it's alone. And look around you during rush hour to see how many solo vehicles there are. So we need to change the mindset. We don't have enough roadway to create more HOV or carpool lanes. And those that are in existence, they're cheaters using them.
But I don't get that, though, and I understand the point about, too many of us drive on our own. But that's the nature of driving, in the times that we live, right? You have to get somewhere. Public transit here is not as efficient as it is in other cities, perhaps not that good. So what do? You jump in your car and you go. I mean, how do you blame people for doing that, though?
It's a habit that people have gotten into. And I think you would think that if what's been going on the last few years hasn't broken people just sit in their car and suffer all the time. And until that changes, and I'm not sure it will.
It's not going to change.
And
you can't mandate people to drive with extra people in their car.
Why can't certain simple solutions, as I pointed out in my op-ed piece, be undertaken?
Well, you pointed out the sensors, for example, which would be a huge help.
We are so technologically
inept,
behind the times. I made a presentation when I was part of the committee in September 2011 with a lot of these suggestions. I didn't come up with them. They exist. They've existed for years. They still exist, and we've done nothing here in Quebec. Nothing. I mean, how do you have those fancy electronic signs with big billboards? They're called PMV, Panneau Variable Message. PMV, Panneau Message Variable. There's a guy or 2 guys sitting in a bunker on Vigier, putting in the information as he thinks he sees it. Sometimes it's right, but sometimes it's wrong. That's not done that way anywhere else. It's all done by technology, by sensors in the road.
So you mentioned in the article, you mentioned Singapore, and I believe you mentioned San Francisco as well. A lot of times we look for answers that are best in class. So what are they doing right that we either are not doing or should be doing?
Well, number one, they're allocating the money that's necessary to technology, and they're doing their research, and they're coming up with solutions which are innovative and which are allowing the efficient management of roadways through technology, through sensors, through metering, through proper camera system so you can see what's going on, and then when they have this information, they use this data to instantaneously program lights or whatever they have to do to enhance the traffic flow. I mean, we have issues with response times for emergency vehicles because of all that. Why does Westmount, and why has Westmount for years, desynchronized the traffic lights for the boulevard? You ever drive the boulevard during rush hour?
Yeah.
First of all, it's a hellhole. You talk about potholes, that's a hellhole of an accumulation of potholes, and I believe they deliberately kept it that way to dissuade people from driving through Westmount during the rush hour. I hear that's going to change under a new mayor there. We shall see.
We'll see. But the other thing, it's coordination. There's a municipal government that's building, there's a provincial government that's building roads, and then there's private contractors building condos. Don't you think that they could just kind of figure it out, somebody in the middle there decide, well, you can't do this and you're blocking this, just get it together.
Well, they say there is coordination, and I beg your pardon, I sat on the committee for a while, and we seem to be making some headway, but it's not evident. Well, that's in March 2023, Madame Plante had a summit on workspace. I don't know if you remember, she came a day-long summit with about 100 different people from construction industries, and they came out with these, fantastic ideas. We're going to reduce the number of cones on the road. We're going to control how long they stay on work sites, because heaven knows they stay too long. And we're going to reduce the size of the cones. What's happened since?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And didn't they actually commission some people to go up to these work sites where no one was actually working? And that whatever happened there?
Not only did they commission someone, they had a guy on the executive committee.
Right.
And I know this for a fact because I was working with him for a while. On the executive committee, to do exactly what you're saying, he made too much noise. He made too many recommendations. They turfed him.
Remember that the city thing would turn up. You're not doing anything. Get out of here and take out. You never happened.
Yeah, good in theory, didn't happen in execution at all. But you're also suggesting in your piece, Rick, that you're writing this at a time when we're just a couple of months away from a municipal election. We have two major parties, or say now three parties anyway, and maybe they're listing. Have you heard anything since this campaign kind of began that makes you, confident that something will change?
Not much. Certainly nothing about Cavendish yet, and Cavendish is badly needed, as we said, 60 years and counting. Coincidentally, yesterday, I heard Le Crabonin refer to better coordination by having someone, he called it Le Grand Boss, who will look after management of work sites. We've heard these things before. Let's see if it materializes. I mean, it's needed. It's badly needed. You have to stop passing the buck. You have to have someone who says, this has got to change. We have Auditor General reports from André Cossette. Then you've got Inspector General reports from the City of Montreal. They all say the same thing year after year. And unfortunately...
You brought up emergency vehicles before, too. Obviously, you worked closely in half for a long time with the fire department. I was speaking to Chris Ross from the Firefighters a while ago. There's some pretty damning stuff in this Auditor General's report about how bad things are, yet we've heard nothing from the city on this either.
This is a completely different subject, but it's got to do with the bunker gear, what the firefighters wear to fires, the helmets, the boots, and the coats and all of that. And there's no question there's an issue, because it's been proven that the carcinogens and all the other stuff they inhale or that adhere to the combat gear causes a problem. Each firefighter is supposed to have two of those sets. Each is worth $6,000. But they're still trying to outfit it. Then, to make matters worse, one of the major washing machines, if you can believe it, and these are not small washing machines to clean this stuff, because it all goes to a central place to be done, broke. So they are now trying to fix it. Chris, who I know well, he's a good guy. He represents the membership well. The 2,400 firefighters is doing his job. But I also know Rick Leckner very well, who's Montreal's fire chief. And they're really trying. Yes, there's a problem. The city recognizes the problem. Rick and his crew are working hard to rectify that problem, but it's going to take time. And they've allocated recently $6 million to do that. In the meantime, the union is in the midst of negotiations with the city, so put two and two together.
And nor does
they're both right, by the way, and they're both trying to solve a problem that needs to be solved.
Nor does it help that our provincial government It's not wild about Montreal because, let's face it, they don't have any seats here, basically. And Madame
They don't
Beau,
need us to get elected.
the new municipal affairs minister, like they're Quebec City people. I don't think they really care that much. They care about the regions. They care about Quebec City. How much do they care about Montreal?
You're absolutely right. Mathematically, they can get elected
Right.
without
Right.
Montreal representation.
Yeah. Which is basically a problem.
I asked you about the current administration, Projet Montréal. Have you heard anything from the opposition, from anybody else addressing these traffic issues that you think, hey, they get it, finally someone's on this case?
Yeah, I've spoken to guys like Alan D'Souza, and I'm pushing his buttons a bit, and they say they're coming out. They claim they had a meeting with Soraya, and she's in favor of Cavendish, but I haven't heard her say that yet. There are people who are opposed to Cavendish because there's the line that Cavendish will be an auto route and bring all kinds of traffic. That's not the case. It previously would have been a major boulevard, but there's no current plan for Cavendish. The most recent plan was to have one lane for cars, one lane for rapid transit, one lane for bikes, which would actually ease the situation. I mean, you know how many people try to cross the Carry in the morning and sit day after day in traffic because they don't even want to come this way. They're trying to get into Saint Laurent or the West Island, but they have to make that terrible loop around. And I'm hoping, as I said in the article, that they will come out and make a major stand. The days are moving along rapidly.
I think it says something about an administration when you consider in the case of Royal Mount that we'd had Andrew Leffey on the show, that it took a private developer to deal with a traffic situation
And
because he didn't want to wait for the city to do it and pay for it on his own.
I believe they spent something like $200 million for that overpass.
Right.
And what they did on Côte de l'Est is magical.
Right.
Because it
It
was.
is, yeah.
I mean, it was a nightmare for years, but nobody took the initiative. Nobody put the bucks in. Andrew did, and it's much better, and we have to thank them for that.
Look, we would be remiss, and we've talked about this before, Camille Hood, which I don't think we thought was going to be an issue heading into an election, is clearly, I think, going to be an issue. So Luc Rabouin the other day said, and he reaffirmed this when I talked to him just the other day, it's either we get a tram or there's nothing. It doesn't happen. There will not be a path across the mountain. To which I said, and you've been around here for a while and you realize the same thing, there's already a bus. The 11 or the 7-Eleven, right?
Right.
Goes over.
Yeah.
What is this push for a tram? I don't get it. But
have
on
this
the
love
other
of
end,
trams.
you have Soraya saying she thinks it should be for everyone, and the administration saying there's no way it can be for everyone. So I don't understand where this is going. What do you think?
Well, the latest I heard is that they're delaying it because of, I beg your pardon, because of Penfield being closed for many years. So
Conveniently.
it was supposed to be completed by 2027,
Right.
and now, from what I hear, it's off the table for the foreseeable future.
Does it make sense to you to close that road from the east end and just leave Remembrance open and not be able to drive across that mountain, that road?
Not completely, because it is. I mean, they need to control the traffic there, and I think they've done a good job in doing that. With all these
Right, yeah.
off-site
Yeah.
bollards, and
Yeah.
heaven knows what. Certainly, they have agreed, if nothing else, to leave it open for emergency vehicles because police, fire, and urgence santé, they need a way to cross the city. I mean, there aren't many options here. You go around Côte Saint Catherine, you go through Westmount, or you go down Côte. Last week they had an accident on Côte de Neige. They closed it, and everybody was detoured over the mountain. So it's like, I'll use the Cavendish as another example. There's no way out of Côte Saint Luc or NDG northward. There's no way over the mountain in an emergency or otherwise if you don't have Camille Hood. So they have to maintain some type of route over that mountain.
Rick, I think way back when you were in a helicopter looking at traffic. Was that blissful?
I loved it.
Yeah, I bet.
I
You
loved it.
never got stuck and you could just...
I'm very bad in traffic to this day.
Yeah.
But I loved it for a couple of reasons. It was, as far as I'm concerned, the only way to really do traffic. And I used that observation as a way to educate myself, as a way to provide insight to authorities. And I must say they listened. And I worked daily with the police. I had a police radio in the helicopter because in those days there was no police helicopter. To this day, Montreal still doesn't have a helicopter. They use SQ. But anytime there was any kind of an event, whether it was a stalled car or an accident, I was immediately in touch with the SQ or SPVM, and I was able to relay that information because I like trying to make a difference. Okay? Some people may say I'm an SD. Okay, yeah, sure. But I like trying to use my passion to make it safer and smoother on the roadways.
So to that end, because we have to wrap up, I'm going to ask you if you can, if you were going to make an appeal now, based on what you wrote to the municipal parties running in this election, what would it be?
Once and for all, realize that we are in a mess, that for the sake of fluidity, safety, and the economy, make some decisions once and for all that will have an impact. Make an independent body responsible with the teeth to make recommendations, and open Cavendish.
We'll leave it at that. Rick Leckner, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Good
Rick.
time.
That wraps up another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here at the Snowdon Deli. We'll see you again soon.